his corporation, Mankind Research Unlimited, in the Washington, D.C. area. Carl's a real pioneer in the field of radionics and psychotronics, and has been associated with the field since Hector was a pup. He's a real pioneer. As I mentioned, he's one time had Paul Sullivan, who was one of the founders of the USPA, working for him at Mankind Research. His background is that his PhD, he's got a master's degree in international economics from the University of Cologne in Germany, and his bachelor's degree was in engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy. And he is the current representative, North American representative for the International Association of Psychotronic Research. Some of you may recall we had an international meeting here 2 years ago. So without further ado, here's Dr. Carl Schleicher.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Eldon. Eldon's an old friend, and he did work with us during the early years of Mankind Research. And one of the reasons that company was founded was due to a well-known book that was published just before that. 1970 it came out, and it was called Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain by Lynn Schroeder and Sheila Ostrander. And at that time I had been just fresh out of doing a successful task for the U.S. Marine Corps in Vietnam, finding tunnels with a dowsing rod, which worked out very successful. And if you read Christopher Byrd's book, that's well documented in there. We actually went so far as to even get a U.S. patent on a dowsing device that still exists, that's still being sold. And Marine Corps still orders some, but they're usually used now by utility companies to find underground tunnels, conduits, pipes, and things of that sort. But it was amazing to me that actually, number one, that you could get a patent for it, and number two, that it would be that big a deal, which it turned out to be. So, and one of the chapters in Psychic Discoveries was on dowsing, which I wrote a paper on and defended that chapter, and as a result of that positive paper commending that book, which had been put down at the time by many critics, because it was areas that were unknown in the U.S., and because it didn't refer to the Dr. Rhine type of statistical analysis of paranormal activities, and it was actually a lot of applications of many useful things, such as Kirlian photography and astral projections, like Robert Monroe reports on, biofeedback devices, electroacupuncture devices, accelerated learning. These were all unknown in the United States, and there was a lot of controversy as to the validity of these and whether or not these were something beneficial. So I formed a company then. They actually turned over to me a whole large amount of data that did not get into their books. And it was a huge amount. I thought it'd be a few files, but it turned out to be a truckload of materials. And I formed a company like a think tank company, I guess that's the best way to characterize it. And anyone that's been to my office, it does look like a think tank with lots of paperwork and files. In fact, I have more files than some government agencies do. And then I proceeded to research every single one of those areas in that book and formed either spin-off companies or developed products out of it, and still doing it today. But and then that got me into the International Psychotronic Group, which met here 2 years ago, and we brought lots of Russians and East Europeans here to Milwaukee, and that has been helpful to me. It's been able to get me access to lots of technologies from that part of the world, and I have a few of these here today to show you. So it's given a good exchange, a good pipeline of new technologies and new information that I hope to share with you today in the time that I have. I wanted to mention one thing. Eldon mentioned about the founders of the USPA in the early years, and on the way to the airport on Thursday, when I was going to Washington National Airport to get my flight, I went right by the home of Henry Nagorka, and he was a co-founder of USPA, and I couldn't help but think about it, you know, the irony of, hey, I'm going here, and Henry's one of the founders. And Reverend Henry Nagorka actually, along with a few other people, founded this organization. And it was just ironic to pass that home. Then I passed another home on the way to the airport, the home of Edward Russell. And Russell did this fine book on Report on Radionics, very excellent book. And Edward was an Englishman who came to the U.S. in the 1940s, early 40s. He brought the British radar to us, which was an amazing invention at the time, and gave it to the FBI, who then turned it over to our military. And then he was very active in radionics for many years, and documented this book concerning the General Henry Gross and Homeotronics Foundation radionics work in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So if you have an interest, this book is being sold by the Columbus, Ohio people here too, if you want this book. Andrew Markowski in his talk yesterday referred to the spruce budworm work being done in New Brunswick, Canada. And the machine that actually did that work is the one that he held up. This one right here. This is a solid-state modern agricultural radionics device that is specifically intended to treat crops against insects. And it's an exact device except for the solid state. They used to use the tube units back in those days with the glass tubes, but we can't get those now, so we've gone to solid state, and it's a much smaller unit. You put the photo and the witness, the reagent, on here and broadcast it through this antenna, and then after each treatment there's a calcite crystal that wipes clean that transmission. So that's a simple process, and works quite well. We're doing a lot of work with that around the world, in Brazil, and on the grasshoppers in Brazil, killer bees, and many different insects around the country. It's a non-pesticide treatment, a non-chemical treatment, and there's no risk to anyone but the insect. And it's particularly good on beetles. We did a study for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and drove the beetles right off this big bush right in front of their headquarters in Beltsville, Maryland, and now I'm pleased to say that contrary to 30 years ago when the USDA was hindering this kind of work, they're now supporting it. They're even giving us referrals. When people write to Department of Agriculture about something like this, they refer it to us, so which is a very complete turnaround from what it was 30 years ago. And that's the case where you can actually have the government work for you or with you rather than against you. So, and being in Washington D.C., you have a good chance to do that. And someone might say, well, why am I in Silver Spring? Actually, I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland, because the FDA is there, and I decided to get as close as I could to them. And my office is practically in the shadow of the FDA, so they can ride an elevator to reach me. So, and sometimes I eat lunch there, and I think they think I might work there at the FDA. So I look like an FDA guy. In fact, I went to Detroit once to check out a product, famous product in a suburb of Detroit, a nutritional product, and this fellow had a bad letter from the FDA, and I told him how to handle it. It wasn't that bad, but I told him exactly how to write the FDA and handle it, and then he said, you know, if you know so much about it, how do I know you're not from the FDA? You know, because you have the same zip code they do. And I said, well, that's true, but I'm there to work with them too. So I have the same zip code, but so does 100,000 other people who have that same zip code. So he thought, he was convinced I was an FDA agent or something like that. So that can happen when you're too close. And well, I've had that rumor about myself and Mankind Research that if you're in Washington, you obviously must be connected with the government or you wouldn't be there. People from California usually think that way. And so there are rumors, but I can say that we're definitely not connected with the government in any way, although at one time I was, only because if I didn't, I would have been drafted. So I decided to serve anyway, or I would have been drafted at that time. But we have no connection. We do hold a lot of government contracts. We actually got contracts that they were hard to get. And back in the 70s, we got a contract to study the effects of Kirlian photography on skyjackers. which was to catch violent-prone people. We could pick their photos up and see if they were violent-prone, and the Department of Transportation actually funded us to do that. And then rather than implement that process, they decided just to search your person and your baggage, which at that time was a violation of the First Amendment right of search. But they decided anyway to do it, to violate that amendment, and no one objected. No one raised a protest because it's for a very good reason. You know, you don't want to fly on a plane with a bomb on it, so no one's going to object to that. But they could have implemented that process to actually catch violent-prone people by the photographs. Maybe now with bombings going on around the country, they could bring that back, and when a person enters a federal building, just take their photograph and see if they might be violent-prone. You know, and that's an interesting way to do it. I want to talk today on I think what is a major breakthrough, and Mr. Davidson spoke. Is he here, Davidson?